Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on Saturday. It's a real pleasure and honor to be with you all and discuss some technical aspect of becoming a solution architect. And we are so happy to have you all here. My name is Ashish, and I would be conducting this session right now. But I'm joined with lots of other AWS colleagues also, and I'll bring them on stage in a minute. But thank you everyone for being here. Some of you may be joining us second time, so I appreciate your continued support to us, this program. And we are so happy to run this program. And our end goal is to help a lot of people upskill on solution architecting and maybe better placed into the career goals or maybe to achieve the technical skills or behavioral skills they are looking forward to. So thank you, everyone. Let me bring up the team members here, and then we will discuss more interesting stuff. So today we have Jamila with us. Then we have Michelle. Michelle is new addition, and James, you already know about James. James has delivered lots of sessions. Then we have Prasad. Prasad is also with us, and then we have Abhijit also. So Abhijit is also joining us. So as you could see, more the merrier. We have more people from Amazon now who can help you in your career goals, maybe do mentoring, maybe support you, maybe do career coaching. So I'll let everyone speak for themselves, introduce a little bit, and then we will get started with the session. Ladies first. Please go ahead. Anyone, Jamila, Michelle, if you want to introduce yourself, James, Prasad, Abhijit, maybe just unmute and let people know what you do, what your motivation for this program is, and then we will talk in the technical terms more.
Sure, I can get started. So I'm Michelle, everyone. I'm a cloud infrastructure architect at AWS. I've been here now for about 2 years, but prior to that, I worked for a small boutique consultancy doing things like training. I was an official AWS trainer, so I very much like teaching people about AWS and helping them get more knowledge. So that's just a little bit about me. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. I'll add Jamila.
Hi everyone, I'm Jamila. I'm a solutions architect working at AWS. Most of you probably know me already from the first batch. I'm here to support you with anything you might be interested on how to become solutions architect. Glad to be here again, glad to see you all, and thank you so much for joining and supporting our BeSA program. Best of luck.
Thank you, Jamila. I'll ask Abhijit now.
Yep, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Abhijit. I'm a engagement manager working with AWS, and I'm definitely really excited to join here you all, and looking forward to this program. Definitely, it's a great learning opportunity for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhijit. Going over to James, and we'll keep Prasad for the last.
Yeah, good. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Some of you probably already know me from last time, but I'm James Eastham. I'm a cloud infrastructure architect like Michelle at AWS, and I am incredibly excited to be here with you all again to talk all things technical. I love teaching people things, especially when it comes to serverless, supporting you with your journey to become solutions architects or potentially professional services consultants like me and Michelle. So I'm looking forward to the next 12 weeks or so. So yeah, enjoy.
Thank you. Thanks, James. Your background is quite interesting to me right now. If you look at the different bottles and the glasses, yeah, that's an interesting one. Thank you. I let Prasad here now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Prasad Rao. I'm a principal partner solutions architect here at AWS. Yeah, most of you might be knowing me from the first batch or even before that. I love mentoring people, helping people getting started on AWS, getting them AWS certified, or helping them with interviews at AWS, mainly focusing on the behavioral aspects of it. So yeah, feel free to reach out to us in case if you need any help with us. And very excited for this 12-week next batch that we are going to have. Ashish will talk about more about how we have structured the program. But yeah, it's great to see you all here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Prasad. So hopefully everyone has a little bit more idea that you could see that we have more personas into this program and more Amazonians are willing to help you out. And probably this would bring diverse group of people and we would have lots of learning as we move forward. There are some changes in the program. I'll talk about them as we go forward, but keep your questions coming. We are monitoring the chat. So if there are something we could help you with in answering, feel free. And this 90-minute doesn't mean that we are there only for that 90 minutes. You could reach out to us on LinkedIn. We would be happy to answer as many questions as we can. Just be a little patient because there may be so many questions coming to us, which maybe are we may not be familiar with that many questions at a time. So just bear with us, but we will reach out to. And in case we forgot to answer any of your question, just give another nudge and we would be happy to answer as many questions as we can. So let me move forward with the program itself and let me make this detail about this program aware. Let everyone be aware about this program. So we will get started and we'll discuss more interesting part about it. I would be talking about how this program would be running, what components we will be discussing about. So people who are new, just and people who are old, just bear with me till I set little expectation and introduce about the program. You already got introduced to the team, and let me help you in understanding why this program and why we are running it. Isn't in this today's world everyone talks about making money or having some benefit coming out of something, but no, we are maybe little different, but we are passionate about something, and that's why we are here. So we will be talking about what this BeSA program is, and you can get lots of detail from the website. So you could check the FAQ page. We have detailed as many questions as we could answer there. So this solution architect program that we want to help people in learning solution architecting. And why this happened, like there are a lot of people who reach out to us that, hey, I want to learn this, or I was interviewed by Amazon, but I couldn't clear the second round, or there were some issues which were identified, or I want to apply for it. So can you give me some guidance? So yes, we do it on one-to-one basis, but if we could drive it as a program and reach out to more people, that would be much, much better. And that's why we are running this particular program. Now, core team you already know about. Maybe Alex is not here today. And then Chris is moving on to a next project, so she would also not be joining. But we have extended team. Some of them are in US time zone, and they might be joining next time. So Abhijit already he is here. Then we have Kamran. Michelle is already here. Tarush is also going to help us. Vikas is also going to help us. Zubairu is also going to help. So as you could see, the team is extending. Why we are doing this? All of us have the same goal that we are passionate about mentoring and giving back to community. Sometime or the other, we all learned from a YouTube video or maybe a blog post, maybe somebody helped us. So we are just trying to return the favor. Obviously, we can't return favor to that individual who helped us, but we could extend that favor to other people who may be interested in learning something. And if we could benefit a single person also, I would say it is still going up to extra mile, and we would be happy to do those things. So that's why we are here. No hidden agendas in this program. How we would run it? It would be run every Saturday, and the program is for 12 weeks. So 3 p.m. UK time, 4 p.m. CEST, 7:30 p.m. IST. This time we changed timing a little bit to accommodate people from US time zone. So that's what we are uh, doing this in a different time. Previously, we had 9 a.m. UK time, but now it would have more suitable timing for people to join even from US time zone. People in India, maybe it a little late for you, but probably you would already have your dinner and now enjoying like little bit of 90 minutes of back session. How we would run it, little logistics information. So live sessions will be on Twitch. So all of this session which you are attending is in Twitch. We would be posting recorded video, but there may be little delay, maybe a day or two, maybe little more depending on our bandwidth. So but we will post recorded videos on YouTube. So if you forgot about attending something, or if you had any urgency, feel free to attend it. You could later watch it, and you could check your questions or ask your question in the comment. We are actively looking for comments, and we would try to answer those as much as we can. Resources, sometime I may refer, or we may refer that, hey, this is a good blog post, or this is a good article, or this is a great video to watch. So we would publish them on the BeSA website. So BeSA website has a resources section. Currently it has resources from previous program, but we would be doing this also, or adding more things on that. And time to time, if we are talking about something, let's say we are announcing some new detail, that communication would be happening into LinkedIn group. So all this information would be there into LinkedIn group. We would be posting information there. So please join it. If you haven't joined, let us know. We would be able to accommodate those things. So we would be able to add more people if you are not part of LinkedIn group, but hopefully everyone would be there. Now, how this program's logistics would be working? We are following the same pattern we had last time. Stage one would be technical track. More focus will be on technical tracks or technical knowledge. We will run it for 8 weeks, and stage two, that is the behavioral track, which will be running for 4 weeks. We will try to keep sessions independent just in case somebody is not able to join or they could not follow it sequentially. Still okay. You could watch the videos later, but we'll try to keep sessions independent apart from a serverless track, which we are going to talk right now. That track may be building on top of one of the other knowledge, one previous session knowledge. So just watch videos if you could miss it. Now, maybe there are a lot of people coming with different intentions here, so we want to make it little clear that what we are expecting is a targeted audience for it. Now, this is our limitation, or this is our thought that this would be the intended audience, but you never know that how a program could have helped different people in different ways or shapes or form. So we are focusing on technical and behavioral concept, because when you are a solution architect, it is not just talking in technical terms. You have to do customer engagement, you have to maintain the customer inside, you have to understand customers business, you may have to create architecture design. Technical solutions are always there, so we'll focus on those technical aspects too, and we'll help you to upskill for a certification in case somebody of you are going for that. Obviously we won't be giving you dumps or exam question to get your exam passed, but we can help you with the resources or help you with some answers in case you need it. And another aspect of here is that the provide interview coaching. Obviously, there is lots of opening in AWS, and we want to work with bright-minded people who could help AWS grow and who could help themselves grow also along with their team. So we will try to give you interview coaching also in case there is something we could help you in interviews, or we would be happy to do that. And we will talk about this more into behavioral part. All right. Now, some things which I want to be a little more cautious here, because in public forum people may have different expectations, or maybe there was some information got misinterpreted. So that's why I want to talk about here that this is not a job guarantee program. We would be happy to refer to you for any Amazonian jobs, but we cannot guarantee that you would getting the interview or you would be getting selected, or we are not making any false promise. We'll try our best. If we could help you in getting a job in AWS, yes, we would try that, and we would be happy to refer to you if you have not already applied. So internal system of AWS recruiting works like if somebody has applied directly, Amazonian cannot refer them back. So if you find something useful, something which is aligned to your skills and which you want to work for in the next profile, let us know the job IDs, let us know the CV of yours, and send us your CV, and we will try to refer you internally, but no guarantee here. The program is not affiliated to AWS. Whatever we are doing it on our voluntary time. We work for AWS, but we are referencing everything here as individuals. This is not the thoughts or the views of our employer. So just be clear here that this is a personal capacity program which we are running. In case we have a conflicting information, let's say we talked about something and you feel that this is not right, or you want further confirmation, best thing would be to check official AWS documentation. Maybe we talk about a program or we talk about a document. Best thing would be to refer into documentation phase of AWS. That would be best. And another thing, the program is run on best effort basis. So we all have a day job, we all have families to manage, we all have personal things to do, and still we are trying to help you out in this case. So if we are not able to respond you timely, or if we could not get you, let's say you say, hey, can you review this architecture, or I have this program or project to do and can you help me, we will try, but we can't guarantee that every question would get answered or every project uh, would be helped with, but we will try our best. So just give us little slack there that we will running this in our best effort. So this is what we are having about this program. If you have any questions, put them into chat. All of us are monitoring chat, and we would be happy to help you out with these questions. All right, let me move forward and talk about what we achieved so far. So let's give an idea like, hey, we did this program last time. Why we are doing it again? Was it successful? I would say it was successful. Maybe not for everyone in the way or shape they wanted, but let me talk about that what we were able to achieve by this program last time. So we built a community. Around 1700 group members were there into LinkedIn group. Then probably there are more now. People joined again. YouTube channel had 21,000 views, so that was there. People were watching it afterwards too. Then we were able to get public confirmation from people that, hey, 9 of you have passed cloud certification, cloud practitioner, 12 of you achieved solution architect. This is from last program, and these are only the people who have publicly admitted on the LinkedIn profiles or LinkedIn posts that, hey, BeSA program helped us. There may be other also who achieved it. Like one confirmation I recently had for a solution architect advanced certification. So hopefully this program has some content or some benefits for attendees. Another thing is, like, it's not about us only, it's about empowering other people also. So if we have seen that people were able to write blog posts about it, or they shared videos in their own languages, so that was completely inspiration to individual. Some people feel that, hey, I may not have something to share, or I am a little shy, or I don't want to share this publicly with everyone, but this program may have given them that, hey, every individual is doing something, let me also contribute to community. We were good to have 4 community builders into this session. So community builder is a program from AWS. We recognize people who have contributed to community through their technical knowledge by blog posts or videos or some other shape and form. So those were also there, and they also contributed their success to it. Now we are not stealing their efforts from them, but we are just saying that they were kind enough to mention that BESA program helped them in some way. Another thing, this is most important aspect of it. We were able to refer 100 plus people to Amazon jobs. Other job profile is different, but we are focusing here purely on AWS. So 100 plus job referrals we were able to make. Obviously, not everyone was called in for interview, but we had 20 plus people who were interviewed. We were able to help them in some ways. Maybe we were able to help them with their questions. Obviously, recruiter can help you. Hiring manager can answer you when you are in the next stages of your job search. But yeah, we were able to help these people, and 3 of them got placed in AWS. And if time permits and their flexibility is there, we would have some of those people come and talk about how their experience was. So we have a good use case. We would have like a great case study about how people have progressed. It took time, but yeah, they were there who are now part of AWS now, or maybe joining soon. So those 3 people are newcomers to AWS. Uh, we will talk about that, Revati, in a minute. We will discuss their details or their journey. So I don't want to like steal their thoughts from them. Let me bring them on the stage, and then we will discuss about them. Some of them had AWS knowledge, some of them had no clue what AWS is. So it's not just about technical knowledge or knowing AWS beforehand. So even if you do not know things beforehand, there's not a problem. If I take my example personally, before I joined AWS, I knew nothing about AWS in a way. Means I was not actively working. I was working with other cloud providers or other on-prem solutions, but never on AWS. So it's not a mandatory thing that to be in AWS, you need to be top-notch AWS professional. That is not at all a thing. All right. All right. What is difficulties of this program? That is we are going to talk about in a minute. We will talk about what is new. So that was all last. Now let me focus on what is new. Now today's session would be little slow paced, just for everyone to assimilate the information, to ask question, to know what this program is and decide whether they want to continue or not. So bear with me. There would not be too much technical content I would discuss, but James would will be holding that fort. He would talk about lots of technical stuff. So let me explain what this program is. First thing, the change thing here is duration is now 90-minute session. So previously we had 2 hour session, and now we have a 90-minute session. There are some challenges with people to focus for 2 hours or watch a 2 hour long video, and that's why I've reduced it to 90 minutes, but power pack sessions. We have more volunteer as I talked about, so we would have that kind of support also. Specialist tracks, this is something new. Now people who already know basic thing, how they can benefit from it. So right now we will be focusing on a specialist track which is for serverless. Maybe next cycle we will focus on containers and machine learning, and we'll build from scratch and take you up to a level so that you would be able to say, hey, I know about serverless, or I know about containers, or hey, I can do a lot of things in machine learning. So that's what our plan is. We would try to create specialists coming out of this program. Right, that's the intention. Next thing is, we may be launching some side projects, and these side projects would be completely on a tangent, maybe something aligned, maybe not aligned, but we may want to launch additional learning opportunities so that more people get benefited. It could be just one session, let's say on analytics, maybe another project on a workshop, or maybe another mock interview. It could be anything. So we are still working on those side projects. If you have any bright ideas, let us know, and we would be happy to think over it. And if we have logistics and time bandwidth available, we would be happy to take those projects also for it. So we would be happy to do side projects. Some are already planned, and we are open to more ideas if you have any of them. Now, another thing, we would like to ask more guests here. Those could be recruiters, could be hiring managers, or it could be someone who got benefited or got placed into AWS. So we would be talking about that, and we'll be discussing on these things also. We'll see how all these things work. We will also try to do shorter videos that would allow you better focus and easier viewing for you. So 2 hours video is little distracting on YouTube sometime. So we'll try to have a shorter video. Again, it depends, and that's how we will be seeing that how we could make it shorter, chunk side, bite sized, so that you could watch it and then maybe move forward with that. Another thing I want to say here, that this one is going to be a little bit of intermediate level things. So very basic stuff is already there on YouTube. Please go ahead and check that. And if in that you have any questions, we would be happy to answer that. And then we may be talking here on little bit more intermediate side. I'll talk about them as we go into the technical concept, but this may be little more intermediate type of thing. I would say a 200 level project or 200 level information is what you could expect from this. But if there are any specific things like serverless, that may go from 100 up to 300 or maybe 400. It depends on how deep the questions come and what kind of projects we want to build on. So be aware on that. Side projects may be very basic, or it could be very complicated. So we will work on that and we'll come back with this option. No problem if you're a beginner, we will try to accommodate everyone, but we would highly suggest that you check the existing video. We covered a lot of beginner stuff there. We will still cover it here, but yeah, that was much in depth. So if you could watch those videos, that would obviously helpful. Yeah. This squad is more focused on a serverless. So I'll talk about that, Ashank, in a minute, that how we are going to schedule this serverless track and all these stuff. So just don't worry, it's not just serverless. There are other things also which is coming up. Now that was what changed. But what is not changing, it is our commitment and your support. So we are still committed. We have same energy. We want to help as many people as we can. And we are overwhelmed with the support we get from you. We get overwhelmed when we hear stories of successful people. So we would try to have your support and help us to help you kind of a stuff. So if you see something which could be improved upon, if you have any great suggestions which could benefit as a community, if you have an idea for a project, reach out to us. We will try our best to accommodate it, and all these links and all would be posted. So we would be posting it on our GitHub page. Existing YouTube videos are on YouTube, and they are linked is onto our GitHub page, and we can post it here also. I would ask somebody in chat to give you the link of existing YouTube videos. All right, so that's what we are planning for. Now, how it would be looking like, on how it would materialize. So that would materialize into a 40-minute technical track. I would focus this time on well-architected framework pillars. So when you design a solution, you have to always take care of common things like security or high availability or performance or cost or maybe some other concept associated with that. So there is well-architected framework, which is a very common thing which could apply in any application, any design. So I'll focus more on that. So first 40 minutes of every session for first 8 weeks, I would focus on the concept of well-architected framework. Then we will have a 30-minute specialist track. This time it is serverless, and James would help out in this case. And then 15 minutes we would have a behavioral track, which could be talking about anything which could help you as a solution architect. It could be inspirational story from someone. It could be a program which we are running on side project. It could be some tips on facing the interview. It would be maybe to call a recruiter and help you in understanding how exactly the recruitment process works on AWS. So we'll try to accommodate that. So this is what the first 8 weeks would look like. The last 4 weeks behavioral, they are like little more of a la carte. So we would try to pick up things from different tracks or different informational details. We would try to accommodate them into that last 4 weeks, and we are also listening to your inputs. We are checking the question into the chat, and based on that we should be able to fine tune those 4 weeks and to give you the best type of option in this case. All right. Can we also have networking as a specialist track? Abhinav, see, there are 100 services in AWS, right? 200, I would say. And we will try to give that. If we see that a lot of people are interested in networking or are struggling with, why not? So we are open to suggestion. We just can't promise that everything would be taken into action, but yes, we are listening to, genuinely listening to suggestions you have. If we could have networking, maybe why not? When we have a 1 or 2 session on networking, should not be a problem. So we will figure out a mechanism to collect some thoughts from you, and we will then discuss them. So we have seen a lot of people +1 on networking, so we will see on that. No worries at all on that. Any setup done for peer networking of the core stakers? We will talk about that. The LinkedIn group is there, so peer networking can happen in LinkedIn group. Ashank, should not be a problem. Just be little uh, 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 supportive to other people also. If people are asking questions or somebody sending some messages, so just be respectful for other people also. But yeah, you could use that LinkedIn group to share something which you have learned new, something which is useful for a lot of people. Feel free to do that. We have no problem in doing that. So just send your message onto LinkedIn group. Now, one more thing here. Just like people when join something online, they feel like, hey, I should be getting something out of it. So what we are going to do, that I have a book published on Kindle and into paperback. So we are going to give 2 books every session. So we'll randomly picking up this thing, and randomly is pure random. It's not like being biased by something. We will have a script running. It would find out one of the people, sorry, 2 of the people, and then you could get in touch with me, and I would be happy to hand you over this particular book which I have published on Kindle. And if you do not get that book, you can still get it. It is free with Kindle Unlimited. And even if you do not have a physical device, you could still read it in an online app or into a browser. So it should not be a problem. So 2 attendees would be picked up into these sessions, and we will be sending you the ebook course. And that book is Service Summary Cards, where I try to summarize all the common services on which you could find out what, why, when, how on individual AWS services. This is focused on cloud practitioner, but similar books are available, and just let me know if you need more details. So that was all on the program. I took a bulk of time today, but it was good to set expectation and understand your knowledge also, or what you are looking for. So we are just checking vibes, and we are now moving forward with the next topic. So what we are going to discuss in this specific week. So week 1 already have one digital version. Thank you. Curious to use Lambda step function API gateway that is coming to. Thank you. Print version available. Yes, it is. You can ping me. I'll send you more details if you need that. Initial batch and the video only has a maximum resolution of 720p. Can be recorded session be 1080p. There we have limit Bhavesh. We are using StreamYard and Twitch, and that is asking us to pay a lot of money to get it onto a full 1080p. So bear with me till I become like multimillionaire by selling my book. Till that time, we have to be 720p only. Once I become millionaire, I would be making it 1080. Thanks for that. All right. Now, coming to week 1, what we are going to discuss here. So I would talk about very basic stuff about technical track, and then I would let James talk about other stuff. So let me start by basics of cloud. Now, this is a repetition of what I have already discussed into the previous session. So just bear with me. I explained cloud computing in very plain basic term for people who are new here. I presented it. So people who have already know, just bear with me. Let me talk about that. uh, I'm still learned, right? Good. So what this picture is representing? This picture is representing early age electricity production. 100 years ago, electricity was not available by touch of a button or by press of a button. Companies or organization had to build these kind of things. Yes, exactly, Akshay. It is like a turbine. So these turbines were used by towns, by industries to produce electricity for them. How this relates here, I will give an example in a minute. Now obviously, if you have to set up these type of big things, machines and all, you would be needing lot of money to invest into that machine first, and then you have to do lot of ongoing maintenance on that. That is a very complicated thing for small businesses. They can't do it. Even if it is bigger business, it's not making any difference to their product. It is just a necessity to keep the electricity running. Now, today's time, we do not worry about all these things. What we do, We just press a button, and that button could be just to power a bulb or to the whole industry, or it could be up to the whole city powering up. No problem at all on that. And the good part about electricity now is that we are paying for pay as you go, or what we call utility pricing. So somebody is creating electricity for us. We are just consumers. We consume it. It could be a simple bulb, or it could be a city consuming, or it could be industrial plant. It could be anything. And that is what we are doing. We are paying as we use the electricity. And this concept is not very different from cloud consumption. Let me compare it. Somebody somewhere is creating this electricity for us. This could be done by plants, plant powered, James. That was a reference to you. It could be biofuel. It could be a nuclear. It could be wind power. It could be solar. Could be anything. And that generated electricity is then distributed across the grid of these type of wires or poles or underground cables or whatever it could be. And then it is consumed by the consumer. What is going to happening here? That we would be having a cloud. Cloud is a resource provided by someone for us. This could be a simple bucket where I could store my data. It could be a load balancer. It could be a firewall. It could be a full blown application. It could be anything. So that is where cloud resources are. So cloud is basically a group of lots of resources, Lego blocks, which you could add to create your own content, to create your own application. So should not be a problem. So that is cloud. Now, to distribute that application or the feature we have created, the best way would be to distribute is internet. Internet is like a omnipresent now. Everyone is utilizing internet for different things. So you could utilize that internet, and through this you are able to have that data or application consumed. So this is similar to electricity consumption. We are just using that cloud for having our resource or application hosted, or to build application or to run application, or for n number of stuff. And then through internet we are able to go ahead and talk about how consumers would be utilizing that. Sorry for the late question. Are we going to cover IAS as well in the course? So that was covered previous time. So I would say, Piyush, that check YouTube videos. You could ping me. I can send you that specific module when we discuss it. But yes, we would be talking about it. And if you have attended previous session, you may have seen that I prefer to use analogies to explain concept. Technology is not coming from space. Technology is coming from what we do on day-to-day basis. It is just a better transformation of our day-to-day tasks. So I would use a lot of analogies to explain you the basic concept so that you would be able to understand how all these components work. So we will discuss lots of stuff as we move forward. So how AWS sits into picture. Now there are a lot of stories on internet which says Amazon built so much data centers that they do not have use of it, and they started selling capacity of that data center, and that is how cloud was born. I would say that is a myth. It was not like a accidental we discovered Eureka or something. It was a engineered effort to deliver cloud services to the customer. Yes, we realized that Amazon.com, e-commerce website, was struggling with the scale because we were growing like multi-million dollar business every year. And to accommodate that for an online business, which is running everything online, we need the robust system, scalable system. And internally, we were struggling with that. So what we did, we tried to figure out, hey, what could be solution to this problem? Once we understood that problem solution, we started thinking that it is also other companies are struggling with. They need a scalable infrastructure. They need an infrastructure which is secure. They need an infrastructure which is agile. So we started making that as a platform and started launching our services. The first service which was launched was Amazon S3. I don't want to go into debate of launched or announced, but yeah, a common service which was initially launched was Amazon S3 and Amazon EC2. And from there, from 2006, we started adding more and more services. And today we have 200 plus services, ranging from a small virtual machine up to a service to control your satellite ground station. That is all possible in AWS. We have global presence. AWS is ensuring that customers are served from the nearby location. So all over the world, there are lots of physical location from these data centers running connectivity provided by which your application is run, and then utility based pricing. So you do not make upfront investment to get into AWS. It is just like getting into any services, log in, register, and you would pay only when you actually use it. And we have a lot of free tier resources to get started. So don't be hesitant. in creating your free tier account. You have to be little alert on what you deploy and how long you keep it running. But yes, free tier is there, and I would say whatever we are discussing, 90% of that would be done in free tier. Maybe for very few occasion you may have a $1 or $2 cost, but if you are cognitive of what you are doing, if you are little alert, if you set budgets right, you would never be paying extra money, and you would have a lot of opportunities to learn and experiment on AWS. So this is what AWS is. All right. Now, will there be a connect with previous recorded session on a week-to-week basis on the time will be intermediate session? You could. So what? Yeah, that's a good idea. I would say that please watch week one video from previous recording. This is what I have covered in that particular video in little more detailed. So you could check that. So after this, check that first week video, and you would be finding a lot of similarities between what I am discussing right now here. Okay. So check week one video if you want to go a little bit more detail on that. Now, I would say AWS has built stacks or service stacks. Anything which you want to build, you have to understand first what is the global infrastructure. So at the bottom of everything, we are running a global infrastructure which is made up of different components like region, then availability zone, and edge location. And through this, we are able to provide the services for our customer. So this is like laying out the brickwork for you. And once this is done, you would be able to go to the foundational services, and through these foundational services you are able to build things like compute, networking, and storage, very fundamental building blocks for any application. And once you go further, you should be able to move forward and use platform services like databases, analytics services, machine learning, deployment services, CI/CD pipeline. But everything start from bottom. So I would talk a little bit on regions, availability zone, and edge locations, and then in coming days we would be talking on foundation and platform services as we move forward. What is AWS Global Network? AWS has hosted applications all over the world, these resources all over the world, and you can just get started from there. What you are seeing right now is are some of the regions which we have available for a customer to use. These regions are our physical presence. Now, when I say physical, it doesn't mean that you will find a board which says Amazon region in London or Amazon region in Spain. We keep them hidden, but these are the physical location where we have presence and from where we could deliver services, whatever you require. How all these work? At the back end of it, that is all servers, right? Not only server, but additional things like networking component. There may be some storage required, maybe some load balancer, maybe some security. So all of these are into server racks. Server racks are hosted and put together into a data center. This data center, I am representing a building. It could be 10 buildings, it could be one building, or it could be one floor. It purely depends on the capacity we need there. But one data center may have around 50 to 80,000 server and required component on that. Now, this is a ballpark estimate. Maybe if it is one or two higher, don't quote me there. But yeah, this is a ballpark estimate that 50 to 80,000 servers are put together into one of the data center. People may have questioned why not add more server? Then if you're adding more server, then it would mean if that fails, more server would be impacted. Maintaining it, power, heating, and its air circulation would become complicated. And that's why we are trying to keep it blocked to 50 to 80,000 servers. Now, one data center itself can fail. So what we do, we may have one or more data center put together into something called availability zone. So we use this individual entity called availability zone or short form AZ, and through this AZ, we are able to combine one or more than one data center, and ensuring that connectivity is there, we provide high speed redundant link between them so that all of these can communicate together. So one AZ may have one or more than one data center. This data center, when I talk about, they are all running into undisclosed location and location which are not being seen publicly or not having a public signage which says AWS data center number 1 or 2. Even being an employee, I don't believe that any of us was able to visit any AWS data center because it is not a important aspect. Important is to keep server location safe, and that's why we do not publicly admit where these data centers are running. Now, one AZ is into one area, let's say Northeast London or Southeast London or Central London. We combine multiple availability zone and they are again part of AWS global network, and that multiple availability zone combined together is called regions. Question is, who manages AZ? AZ is managed by AWS. We take care of people. So see, when I say I has not visited, that means my profile doesn't ask us to go into visit a data center. There would be data center engineer, there would be network engineer, cooling and heating and ventilation engineer. Obviously they would know about that data center, but not a public information. So only the people who know may know that, hey, this is one of the data center where I go and work, but they would not know where the second or third or fourth data center is running, or where the next AZ is planned. So obviously there are people required to run these. A lot of things are automated, but only the people who work there may know, and they may be not showing it or not be actually aware that is it part of AZA or AZB. There may be some internal mechanism to hide that complexity from more people. So that is what a region or group of AZs is. Okay. Now, as you could see, the regions is growing. We are always trying to add lots and lots of regions so that we could reach out to customer. Last I remember is 28 regions, and we are adding more regions as we move forward. So this would keep on happening as we speak. More regions are coming up as we have more demand for cloud services. We are adding and expanding that global infrastructure. And the good part, all these locations are connected by AWS own global network. So we maintain privately that network. Yeah, recently it was in UAE, exactly, Akshay. So yes, that happened in UAE, and maybe more coming soon as we speak. Right. So we would be keep on expanding that. We would invest in these infrastructure so that our customer can get the benefits. And then last thing on this global infrastructure is edge location. These are the locations from which we could deliver content in a cached format. So all over the world, if you see, these are the dots are representing most populous cities in the world in a way, and we keep our data near to customer. If a lot of people are living into a city or a country or a location, lot of demand for request for resources would be coming from there. So we try to address it by keeping as many resources available into these locations so that everyone would be having better performance benefits. But not all services run here. We have few services like Route 53 CloudFront. They run from here. They are not full blown region. They have subset of services available only. So that's all. What are the three things? So three things to remember. Basic unit is availability zone for a global infrastructure. Availability zones are combined together into a region, and then independent entity edge location or point of presence exist to augment this whole network. All of these are connected on AWS global network. Right. So that's how all these things would be working. Question is, any mention SA CO03 understand material of outdated just stored preparation for SA03? So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about certification. Maybe we can have a certification workshop where I would be happy to answer as many questions related to certification, or maybe help you in answering some of the question. So I would stop here. I consume my 45 minutes. So hopefully you understood what the program is. You understood how all these components will work together. And now what we will do, we will discuss about we will take a short break, and once that break completes, then we will ask James to help us with the serverless track. So please bear with me. I'll set a 5-minute timer, and then we would be coming back and we'll discuss more interesting stuff. Right. So hope you are enjoying. If you have any questions, just hold on for 5 minutes. Let us take some breath. Hold on for your question for 5 minutes, and once we return, we would be happy to answer more. I want to just quickly select one of the winners. I'm going to do, I'm going to launch a small script. It is not my script, it is already there on internet. But yeah, I would to hopefully someone's name, and if that is your name, please reach out to me, and I would be facilitating the books to you. So let me put this link here. So it would randomly select one person from the list wherever you are present. Just ping me on LinkedIn, and congratulations on winning the book. And I would be selecting another winner in the last session. Sorry, last minutes of the session. So Naveen, congratulations. And now I hand it over to James. Let me add James on the track. Voice is breaking. Not sure if it is. Let me start again. Is everyone okay to hear me fine? James, you are up.
Yeah, I can
I'll
hear you now.
let you share this.
It was breaking up a little bit, Ashish, but we have you back now, it seems.
Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry for that. Now I'll hand it over you to James, and all the best.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ashish. And first off, again, welcome everyone to the second season, if you will, of the BeSA program. Whether you're coming back from the first session or you're here for the first time, then I'm incredibly excited to be doing this specialist track and going on this specialist journey together with you for the next 8 weeks or so. Today, we're actually going to learn about the why. So as much as I'd love to dive straight into the technical side of serverless, understanding why serverless is important, how it can benefit you is really important as part of your journeys towards becoming solutions architects. So who am I? I always like to put this slide in because I like to get my dog in as many presentations as possible. So as I said at the start, I'm James Eastham. I'm a professional services consultant at AWS. So it's slightly different to a solutions architect, but there's a lot of similarities. My background is in .NET development. So I've been doing .NET development for around 10 years now, with the last 5 years of which being mostly focused on serverless and cloud-based applications. I'm also obviously a dog dad, and I like to get out running as much as possible with my dog. So now that I've got my dog in the presentation, let's actually get into some technical stuff. So like I said, I'm from a development background, and sometimes I find myself coming into what I call the magpie effect. So whenever I see a new technology, I instantly want to just use it, that new shiny piece of technology. I want to just get my hands on. But one of the most important things I've learned is that understanding the why is so much more important. Because as wonderful as serverless is, there's places where serverless might not be the best fit. So understanding why serverless became so useful is a great place to start to understand if it's the right fit for your application. So we will get into the technical stuff, of course, but this is a really great place to start. So if we think about a typical application, we most of the time will have 3 layers in one way. We'll have some kind of API or interface or some way for things to communicate with our system. We'll have something in the middle doing some kind of compute. That might be business logic, that might be some AI ML, but there'll be something doing some custom stuff. And then there'll be some kind of storage of some kind. This is typical of most kinds of application. Now, the API layer or the interface layer, we can shift some responsibility onto that layer. Maybe we can put some security, maybe some routing onto that API layer, but everything else really is going to sit in this compute layer. Things like the business logic, the database interaction, the custom things that we've written to really benefit our customers. So there's a lot of stuff in this compute layer. And if we think about these 3 layers, and I want you to put a 1, a 2, a 3 in the chat, but which of these 3 layers do you think is the most likely to cause a problem in our system? If you could just pop a 1, a 2, or a 3 in the chat. 2, yes, lots of 2s coming in. Yeah, a good mix. See lots of 2s, 3s, and 1s. So yeah, absolutely. So for anyone who popped a 2 in there, the 2, the compute layer, is a lot of the times the most probable place for things to start to go wrong. And why is that? What is it about this compute layer that makes things, increases the possibility of things going wrong? Well, that's because that's likely where I've had my fingers on things. That's my code. You know, as humans, we get things wrong. We make mistakes. That storage layer, we might be using some kind of storage technology, maybe a relational database or a file store. That's going to be some kind of third-party system. A lot of us aren't rolling our own or writing our own data storage systems. And similarly, the API layer, a lot of us aren't writing our own APIs, the actual technology that manages the API, but The compute layer that sits in the middle, that's the things that we get our hands on. And that is where we can start to introduce problems. That's a little bit abstract. So let's get a little bit more concrete with that now. So if I think back to the first job I had in tech, and at the time I was just a software support consultant at an e-commerce company here in the UK. And all of the systems that ran this e-commerce website, they ran from a server room that was actually in the offices that we all ran from. So a proper traditional on-premise data center. And it was a relatively small company, so there were only around 10 servers to run the whole system. And I can quite clearly remember an outage we once had that caused absolute panic in the office, because systems started going offline, customers started calling up and asking why their websites weren't working, but nobody had done anything. The developers hadn't changed anything, so nobody had actually done anything yet. Things were going wrong and nobody could work out why things were going wrong. And it turned out one of the employees who managed the hardware had accidentally knocked out a cable in the data center. They'd been doing some maintenance down there and knocked out a cable and not realized it. Once we realized that, we plugged the cable back in, turned the server back on, panic over. Now, I'm sure any of us who've worked with any kind of physical hardware, even as much as your router sat at home, you can accidentally knock the cable out, everything goes wrong. So managing these physical data centers and these physical things is quite a responsibility, really. And there's a lot of potential things that can go wrong. And that responsibility is what at AWS we'd call undifferentiated heavy lifting. These are things that aren't adding value to your customers. They're not delighting your customers. These aren't features of your system that differentiate you. They're just things that everybody has to do. So when we first started doing cloud computing and things like EC2 came along, that started to remove some of this responsibility from us building applications. So now, instead of having the risk of pulling out a cable in a server in a data center, maybe we now run that same server on EC2 instances in AWS. And maybe we run them EC2 instances across multiple availability zones that Ashish was talking about earlier. And maybe we put them EC2 instances in an auto scaling group so that if one of these servers was to go offline or we have some increased load, we can add additional servers as and when we need to. And we can also apply that same thinking to our databases. We can run databases across multiple availability zones and switch between the two as and when we need to. We could even take this a step further and get really, really available and start to run applications across multiple AWS regions. So we have that same auto-scaling group across availability zones, but across multiple regions. And maybe we can use something like Route 53 to then route the traffic to the closest region to our users. And if one of these regions was to go offline, if US East 1 here was to have an outage, then the traffic would just be routed to EU West 1. And now we might be thinking, great, we've solved the problem. We've solved the problem of data centers and servers going offline. But actually, auto-scaling EC2 instance is actually quite difficult when you get into it. And there's a number of reasons why it's difficult, because if we are defining an auto-scaling group, we also need some kind of metric or policy to determine when that group scales. But what metric do we use to do that? Like, if you want to just put in the chat very quickly, like if you had to define when to add a new EC2 instance, what metrics would you use to kind of define when you needed a new server? So what do you think we could use? Yeah, exactly. CPU capacity. Yeah, exactly. CPU network. Yeah, it's a good call out with network. And yeah, these are all really great. Yeah, when it reaches 80% utilization, great call out, Naveen. And yeah, these are all great answers. But again, we can say CPU utilization, but what utilization? 80%, 90%, 70%. Maybe it's time-based. I saw somebody said Prime Day. So yeah, absolutely. We know that there's an event coming up, so we can scale our servers ready. But this deciding which metric we use to determine this scaling, again, is quite challenging. And we could even look at health checks, so we're looking at metrics here, but we can look at that another way. If a server goes offline, then we know that we need to replace that server. But then what determines if a server is healthy or not? Is it if it's responding to requests? Is it if that it can communicate with the database? So defining these policies that can determine how and when we scale our instances adds another problem here. We need to define that. And again, this is what we could consider undifferentiated heavy lifting, to use that same term again. These are things that we need to decide, but they aren't possibly setting us out in the marketplace and really delighting our customers. This is just an operational thing that we have to do, that everybody has to do. So yeah, there are a bunch of status checks that EC2 emits, metrics, should I say, and these are all based on the things that you absolutely said in the chat. You were all absolutely right. Network connectivity, memory, CPU. So EC2 does give you the ability to get at some of these metrics, but it's how we use them where the challenge comes in. And if we also think about adding new servers or replacing servers, there's a time lag to that. If we needed to scale and add an additional server, well, that server needs to be initialized. It needs to be, our application code needs to be loaded onto that instance. We need to then check our applications up and running, and then it can start to receive requests. If we receive a sudden unexpected burst of traffic, there's that time lag there that we need to wait a period of time for that new server to become available. So there are some challenges that come along with autoscaling. It's absolutely solving the problem of a physical data center, but there are still challenges that come along with this. And this is where the AWS shared responsibility model comes in. And this is where we define the responsibility that AWS takes on and that you need to take on as a user of AWS. So if we look on the far left here, we have running a virtual machine in your data center. Well, that is all of the responsibility on you. AWS does not have any responsibility on the virtual machines in your data center. EC2, as we've talked about, starts to shift some of that responsibility onto AWS. So things like the physical hardware itself or the security of the physical hardware. But you still need to patch the server, scale the server, operate the server. That's all work for you to do. If we take that right over to the right-hand side now and start to think about AWS Lambda, well, Lambda, AWS take on almost all of that operational responsibility. Scaling, patching of the underlying infrastructure, all of that is taken on by AWS. So all that you need to care about is writing the code that will delight your customers. You can focus purely on the business logic. And as a developer, that's amazing. Like, all I need to think about now is my application code, writing the code that solves the hard problems. And everything else, operating the underlying infrastructure, can be managed by AWS. And that applies at all levels here. We've got databases that are serverless. We've got storage, messaging, communication, analytics. There's serverless options across all layers of the stack. And at all layers, we have this same benefit of AWS taking on more of this operational responsibility. So we've talked a lot there about how this affects our customers, how things going offline can affect people using our systems. But this also applies internally within our applications, because there's different parts of our applications that are going to need to talk to each other, and they're going to be coupled together. And when we're integrating two services together, we introduce some element of coupling. And typically, you might do that with some kind of request and response. So one application maybe talks to another application. And then maybe we have 5, 10, 20, 100 different applications. Now, if we think about them same problems with running these applications on EC2, if one of these applications goes offline or can't scale fast enough, maybe service A starts sending loads and loads of requests to service B and it can't keep up, then we need a way to manage that. We need a way to kind of operate that and work with that challenge of this unexpected scale and outages. And we're also now running things across a network. The network becomes a real challenge when you start to run things in the cloud. The fallacies of distributed computing are a set of fallacies that were proposed by a guy called Peter Dusch, who worked at Sun Microsystems. And they describe some assumptions people make when they start running distributed applications. And when you're running an application in the cloud, almost every application is a distributed application. So this is another problem we need now to solve. We need to solve some of these realities of running applications across a network, because networks are unreliable. People have, they want to look at a network specialist track. Well, there's a reason there's a network specialist, because these are hard problems to solve. Managing latency of the network, securing the network, all of these things have the potential to start to cause issues in our systems, as well as that factor of needing to scale and operate and manage. And this is where serverless starts to get really powerful, because event-driven serverless applications are lots of small independent pieces that are loosely joined together. Serverless applications are commonly modular, and they're composed together from multiple serverless AWS services. We focus a lot on integrations, things like API Gateway to Lambda, maybe SQS to Lambda, or Amazon Event Bridge. And these are all services we're going to get into over the next 8 weeks. We'll cover the architectural patterns, AWS services, best practices when you are building serverless applications. But today we're going to start with the compute. We're going to start with AWS Lambda. So when I used to think about serverless, I used to think serverless was Lambda and Lambda was serverless. I thought they were one and the same. But in fact, serverless has been around since the first ever AWS services. SQS and S3 were the first 2 AWS services launched, both of which are completely serverless. So serverless isn't a new thing. The word is, but it's been around for a long time. But Lambda is pretty fundamental to a lot of serverless applications, because it's where we can write that custom business logic that delights our customers. And we can do that in a way that means we only need to focus on our business logic. So before we get too deep, let's just level set today on what exactly Lambda is. Well, Lambda's biggest superpower is that it's completely event-driven. Lambda reacts to things that are happening in your system. And Lambda lets you run your code without worrying about provisioning or scaling or patching or managing servers. You're only paying for the exact compute time that you consume. And you're paying for that on a per millisecond basis. So if you have a part of your application that only runs for 3 milliseconds, you will be charged for exactly 3 milliseconds. And that charge is based on the amount of memory that is allocated to your Lambda function. So if you allocate more memory, you've got a higher per millisecond cost. But a really important thing to remember is that just because you've got a higher per millisecond cost doesn't mean that you'll have a higher overall cost. And what I mean by that is that if you maybe double the per millisecond cost of your Lambda function, but it runs in a 1/10 of the time because of that additional memory, that's going to cost you less overall. So that's a really important thing to remember with Lambda. And as we start to get through these sessions, we'll start to look at ways you can tune your Lambda functions and really optimize that price versus performance metric. And with Lambda, you can run code for almost any kind of application because it's completely event-driven. And there's the whole range of different event sources that you can wire up to Lambda. You can do almost anything from back-end processing to the kind of things you might do with PowerShell scripts or batch scripts to entire microservices-based web applications. Like Lambda can do almost anything. You can write code for Lambda in a range of different programming languages. So things like .NET, Node, Python, Java, Go, all of these things are built into Lambda as what's called a managed runtime. And that's where the actual runtime is built into the Lambda service. But you can also use a custom runtime. So you can bring your own application code to Lambda and run it on Lambda. And you can do that using the custom runtime, or you can even package your code up as a container image and you can actually run a container image in Lambda as well. So it's an incredibly powerful compute service that, like I say, there's no operational responsibility. You write your code, you focus on your business logic, and AWS will handle the rest. So I see a great question in the chat, actually. How do we decide when we should use Lambda? I will come to that towards the end. But as I said, it does cover a whole range of different use cases that are possible with Lambda. So there's a few different ways that Lambda can execute. There's three, in fact. The first of which is the synchronous execution model. And the synchronous execution model is how Lambda integrates with things like API Gateway. So API Gateway will send the event payload to Lambda, and API Gateway will wait for Lambda to respond. Lambda will do its work, do its processing, and the response that comes back from the Lambda function will be passed back to API Gateway and back to whatever called API Gateway in the first place. That might be a web application. The second model is the asynchronous execution model. And that's how Lambda works when it integrates with things like SNS, in that the event payload is sent to Lambda, and Lambda will just store that in an internal queue within the actual service. And then the caller can just carry on and start doing more things. So like SNS as an example, SNS will send a message to Lambda and carry on doing more work. And eventually the Lambda service will process that message. Normally, the asynchronous processing is really quick in the order of milliseconds, but you can start to actually monitor that time that a message spends on the internal queue. And the final execution method is the poll-based execution method. And this is how Lambda integrates with things like SQS and DynamoDB streams. And with something like SQS, which is Amazon's queuing service, the Lambda service will actually poll the queue on your behalf. So the Lambda service will look at the queue. It will look how many messages there are on the queue. If there are some available, it will pull them off the queue and then send that to your Lambda function as an event payload. Lambda can then go off and do its work. And if the Lambda function is successful, the service will also manage deleting that message from the queue as well. So nothing else then processes it later. And this is how it works for, like I said, DynamoDB streams and Kinesis streams. The service manages that polling and processing and deleting on your behalf. So how exactly does Lambda work? Let's quickly talk about how Lambda runs under the hood, because this is quite important to understand when you start building applications on Lambda, especially if you're used to the more stateful, long-lived server-based application development. So whichever of the execution modes are used, every event payload always comes into a front-end invoke service. And once the request hits that service is then going to have a decision to make. It's going to look to see if there are any execution environments available for your Lambda function. And an execution environment is just a completely isolated container that runs on top of a virtual machine. And what the Lambda service will do is it will say if there's no execution environments available for your Lambda function and the version of that function, then the service needs to create a new execution environment. So what the service will then do, it will look for a micro VM, it will create the execution environment, it will load up the runtime depending on what runtime you're using. It will then download a copy of your application code. That might be from S3, or if you're using container images, and it will then set up that code on the execution environment. And then that execution environment is then ready to receive your event payload. And that's what's known as a cold start in Lambda. So if you've read about Lambda or heard about Lambda, it won't be long until you hear about cold starts and warm starts. And that cold start is that process of the execution environment being created initially. And the time that takes differs based on a number of different factors: the language that you're using, the size of your application bundle. So if you have a gigabyte container image, for example, that's going to give you a longer cold start than if you had a 5 megabyte zip file, for example. However, once an execution environment's available, then it can be reused. And that's what's known as a warm start. So if I had a request come in, an execution environment was created and completed, the work was completed. If a second request then came in, that execution environment may still be available to be reused. And that is what's known as a warm start. Now, with these execution environments, they aren't long-lived. So at some point, these execution environments will be deleted and destroyed. And there's no SLA or time period from the Lambda service for how long that will be. These execution environments are completely isolated. There's no communication between these execution environments. And each environment gets its own allocation of the memory. So if you give a Lambda function a gigabyte of memory, each individual Lambda function will get its own gigabyte of memory. And that's actually really powerful because you get a really consistent performance then. If you compare that to a server-based model, where every request that comes into the server is sharing the same resources of the server, with Lambda, each request has its own isolated set of resources. And each execution environment will only ever process one request at any one time. So if you had two requests come in at an identical time, you would likely then get two separate execution environments. So these are all really important things to remember when you're building applications on Lambda. So how do we start to think a bit more serverlessly now? Well, the first thing is to focus on your application code. Focus on the things that will delight people, not how you're going to operate it, how you're going to operate your monolith on an EC2 instance. Focus on the features first. It enables you to focus on your customers. And secondly, Lambda's completely event-driven, like I say, and that doesn't mean that event-driven architecture equals serverless. The two things are separate. And we are going to talk about event-driven architecture probably next week. But making events first-class citizens in your architectures really helps to empower the way Lambda runs, because Lambda is event-driven. Lambda is stateless, and this is really important if you have any persistent state in your application. You can't really do that easily with Lambda. But that's where things like step functions start to come in to start to manage this state across Lambda functions. And we are definitely going to have a whole session on step functions because it is my favorite AWS service. And finally, use the services. Don't start to reinvent the wheel. Remember, serverless applications are built from lots of small pieces loosely joined together. If you need a queue, use SQS. If you need maybe some kind of NoSQL database, then use DynamoDB, but use the services that are available to you and integrate with the things that AWS provides to you. And as we kind of said at the start, serverless is more than just compute. The serverless options are all layers of your application. Databases with things like DynamoDB, storage with S3, all the different services for integrating your applications together. All of these are completely serverless and have that same low operational responsibility to allow you to focus on your applications and your architectures. So very quickly, I just wanted to talk about what we can build with serverless. We've had that question on when do I know if serverless is the right fit? Well, at a simple level, we can just duplicate that same architecture we had at the start. We've got an API layer, we've got a compute layer, and we've got a database layer. Our API layer could be API gateway, which gives us this low operation API that can take ownership of the things like security and the routing. And it does that in a highly scalable way where, again, we don't need to worry about operating it. We just have an API. We define the routes and the integrations, and API gateway handles the rest. We've got Lambda sat in the middle, and we've just talked about all the benefits of Lambda. It's scalable. You pay for exactly the number of requests that you're receiving. You can focus on your things that will delight your customers, focus on your business logic, and let AWS worry about the rest. And then at the far end, we've got DynamoDB. I'm probably going to do a session on DynamoDB itself at some point because it is a really powerful database service. But just know that DynamoDB is a completely serverless, pay for what you consume database that can scale almost infinitely. You know, we use DynamoDB here internally on the Amazon retail site, for example. So to answer that question, is Lambda the right fit for my workload? Well, in almost all cases, yes, absolutely. And there's a few reasons why it might not be the right fit. So the first is around timeouts. Lambda functions can only run for a maximum of 15 minutes. And that's a hard limit. You cannot increase that. So if you have a single process that needs to run for longer than 15 minutes, you may need to look at a different option. The second is what we've talked about around state. Because Lambda execution environments will be deleted eventually, then there's no persistent state. The third option, the third thing to think about is if you need any kind of specialized hardware, if you need really specific GPUs, maybe you're doing some massive scale data processing, for example, you might need to look at a more GPU focused option. And because with Lambda, you can't manage the underlying infrastructure, you don't have that control of what the actual infrastructure looks like. But aside from that, Lambda can do almost anything. So what can you do between now and next week? Well, I'd really encourage you to go and have a look at this website if you're interested in serverless. So this is a website managed by the Serverless Developer Advocacy Team here at AWS. And it has a whole range of different resources on it, learning resources, training videos, patterns and pre-built Lambda functions and snippets of code that you can go and look at to see what you can build with serverless technologies. And my final piece of advice for, well, every week of this specialist track is to go and build, get hands-on and build things and try things out. And because these serverless technologies are pay as you go, and most of them have really generous free tiers, you can build a lot of POC applications that may well end up costing you nothing at all. So it's a really powerful way to get started with serverless. So like I said, over the next few weeks, we're going to go through different architecture patterns, serverless services, different ways of integrating these applications together to get you to a point where you can confidently talk about serverless applications. In the meantime, any questions that come up, absolutely feel free to reach out to me directly. The first link there is to my Twitter handle. There may be lots of pictures of my dogs, so I do apologize for that in advance. And also feel free to message me on LinkedIn. But yeah, that is week one of the specialist track, and I'm excited to speak to you for the next 7 weeks to really help you grow your serverless knowledge as solutions architects. Thank you. I'll hand it back to you, Ashish.
Thank you, James. Thank you so much for that. And it's interesting to see what all the possibilities of a serverless. And I would say like there are one aspect we discussed Lambda, but there are lots and lots of services offered and they have nice integration. You do not need to do a lot of coding. Maybe a small bit of event-driven architecture can be built with very less code. So don't hold yourself back if you think, hey, I cannot code, that means I cannot develop. It's not true with AWS. We give you tools, we hide complexity, we give you ready to use component, lots of examples so you could just get started without having lots of things on that. So thank you, everyone.
And one of the things I'm going to cover in one of the sessions, Ashish, is around more low code and no code applications, how you can build applications with these integrations that Ashish is talking about, these native integrations between these different building blocks. So yes, we will get into that. Absolutely.
Thank you. All right. So thank you for that, James. And now we would talk about another interesting aspect, and I would ask Prasad for this. So Prasad would be going through one of the guests here, and I would not reveal. I'll let you do the honors, Prasad. So I'll hand it over to you, and I'll also add her when you ask me. All right. I'll remove myself, and I'll let you lead it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish.
Sorry, my bad. Wrong button. I need another coffee.
No problem at all. Yeah, thanks, Ashish. And yeah, great session by Ashish you and James. Even I always learn few things when I hear to you guys. But yeah, let's switch gears and talk about the behavioral track. And for behavioral track today, we have a guest speaker today who has been a very active participant in our last BeSA session. Like she used to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and she has been really consistent in attending all the sessions, and it's a great success story. Anyone has any guesses on who the guest speaker is by any chance? Anyone from the batch one who knows that, who used to join us every week at 3 a.m. Her time? And one of the reason why we shifted this to, like a change different timing, was saying that, there are from people who would like to join. Uh, but yeah, without further ado, let me introduce you to Balwindwer. Yeah, someone seems like
Yeah,
has this is
she is
correct.
famous. A lot of people could guess her. So welcome,
Yes.
Balwinder. It's so good
Ashish,
to have
I'm
you
not famous. Hi.
here. You are inspiration, isn't it? Like
You are an
if you could like
inspiration, actually.
inspire even one single person, you are making a huge difference, I would say. So you did a lot. So I let Prasad and you talk, and maybe I will come back with my selection. There was a question I was reading. Hey, will my random script will again pick up Naveen? So if it picks up, we will remove him and we'll add another one. Don't worry. So I'll let Prasad and Balwinder have a conversation. Thank you.
Cool. So yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. Yeah. Before I let you introduce yourself, uh, I'd like to just share that, the amount of effort Balwinder has put in over the last year or even more than that, and teaching herself cloud and joining different committees, and getting herself upskilled, and then recently joining as a cloud solutions architect at Microsoft. It's an amazing success story. So yeah, would you like to start, start sharing, about your cloud journey, how you started and what led to you being at Microsoft right now?
Yeah, I'll get to that. But first of all, Prasad, I want to thank you all. I mean, you guys have been a big part, and I've been a part of a lot of communities. And but this has been, I mean, I just cannot thank you guys enough. There was, I mean, the very first session at 3 a.m. And let's start with the fact. And I am not a 3 a.m. person. I'm not a person who would wake up at 3 a.m. We have a little joke in the house. We live in Texas and tornadoes is a big thing. And even when my kids were younger or even otherwise, my husband is like, oh, there could be a tornado passing by and I won't wake up at 3 a.m. if it is 3 a.m. So thank you for making it so good that I had multiple alarms on. I used to sleep on Saturday mornings in a separate room just because I could wake up and do this, just because this was so valuable. And everybody, Prasad, and team, I just cannot be thankful enough. That's where I want to start from. So in terms of my journey with cloud, I do have an IT background. I have been in customer success. I'll date myself. I started right out of school when it was pager days. Uh, Designing PCBs is one of the things I've done. Deployment, Microsoft products is one of the things I've done. I did it all until I got two boys, and both of them did have some developmental delays, and there came a time that us as a family and me and my husband as parents had not had to. We made the choice that I'm going to stay home and help them with what they needed, and because that for any parent, raising a kid is hard enough to begin with. Add those complexities and challenges to it. It takes it to a whole other level. And when you are a driven person and this is what you love, it's not easy to kind of just let go, but that was the right decision at that time. And I did that. My kids grew up, and the break, I didn't plan on being it as long as it became, and that's okay too. But right around 2020, I decided, and I was ready to get back. And cloud computing is not something, and my husband is in IT as well. He's in traditional environment. And I knew I was going to come back. I got ready is when COVID hit. And when COVID hit, my husband has always worked from home in last 12 years. And so that was not even a challenge for us. But me getting back is where the decision was made that I'm not going. But I knew that I was ready to get back is when Amazon did mass hiring, but it wasn't in tech. It was since the business grew up exponentially for Amazon right around March, right when COVID hit. May 2020, I joined Amazon in a totally different capacity. It was within customer service realm of things. They moved me over to shipping and delivery, and it was 6 to 9 months contract. And this wasn't tech. And thankfully, we were okay where money wasn't the reason for me to get back. I wanted to get back because I wanted to get back. And that's where when I brought on this decision, and I knew I will have some resistance from my husband because he was like, this is not tech. And my promise to him was, yes, this is not tech, but I'll figure my way out. I'll look into things and I will be back to tech. And
So
that
you had a long break, right? How long the break was?
it was 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was 8 years. And I was like,
Almost starting from the scratch, right? Like,
yes, I was already like, I was out of touch, but yet I kind of kept in touch. Where I kind of remained in touch is if you see my husband's office, we've got a rack of servers. So anything new, he was experimenting or doing stuff and all of that, even though I was home, I didn't lose touch. But at the same time, you are so right. 8 years is a long, long time. And even if COVID didn't happen, I knew I had a challenge ahead just to get back, even if it was data center, right? So that's where, when I was working in a different capacity, I created a free tier account, AWS, right? I started looking around. I started looking into, with being Amazon employee, you did have access to some trainings, but it was still intimidating. I didn't sign up until there was a Nancy Wang. She's a general manager within storage, and she's got a nonprofit called Advancing Women in Tech. She came up with a with the cloud practitioner certification challenge, and I signed up. And I signed up even though I was that short term. It was a different category in mass hiring. I reached out to her. I said, I know it's AWS, I know it's regular employees, but I do want to do it. And she did like make arrangements for me to be included. And within 15 days, I had my certification with a full-time job, where I was still trying to get back to the rhythm of things. And that rhythm of things, honestly, wasn't like smooth ride in the sense like it was fast paced. Amazon would train people for 6 weeks. It came down to 2 weeks. By the time I joined, it was 1 week of training and boom, right, get in. But at the same time, when I did that, I knew cloud computing is where I wanted to be. This is where I'm going to do things. And that's when I started doing the internal trainings. I knew, and I've got a thing with this is one of my skills that I'm good with people, and looking at different aspect of things. I was like, okay, architecture route is where I'm gonna go. But
That's a great point here. Like architecture is like 50% technical and 50% consulting. It's a people skill that is not required in the architecture skill. It's in the architecture domain. So yeah.
So that's where knowing myself that I'm good with people and good with ambiguities in the sense like anytime we're doing architecture, right? It's a lot of times you might not have customer laying it out for you. This is my challenge and this is where I want to be. This is like going and having a conversation and understand it even when they're not saying it. But even that was like, okay, I did my AWS, the associate exam, the SAA, in April 2021, and yet I knew there is something missing. There is something missing in the sense that, partly and rightly so, with companies, they would have their reservations, because I have a huge gap. Even though I worked for Amazon for 9 months, it wasn't in the capacity, in the direction I was heading in. So it technically still was a gap. I joined another program wherein I did go deep into learning architecture, not just the services, because services alone do not make architecture. You have to be able to tie in things and be able to tie in to the business requirements, the outcomes, the transformations. All of that element had to come in. And I started following you, Prasad, way before you started BeSA program. And when you started with that, I signed up. I, started attending. 3 a.m. wasn't easy. I've already said that, but it was valuable enough for me to have that drive, to do that. And that's exactly what I did. And what it gave me was a lot of confidence and a different perspective to look at things. It could be Jamila explaining her IoT project, right? It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It could be Chris talking about her journey in the sense, oh, I had to learn a new language. Not only she's learning architecture, she's learning a new language altogether in order to get where. So it was a lot of, surrounding yourself, and seeing people go through the journey and yet getting there at some point is what was very helpful also. So, and I started interviewing in this year, March, and I'm gonna say I've had my fair share of failures.
Let's talk about that. So everyone feels that, success, we all know success is not easy, and it's a journey, right? And it gets builds on a lot of failures that we go through, and it's a process.
Yeah, it sure is a process. I mean, if anything, this looks good, whatever it is right now, but it's come with its own challenges and its own hardships in a way. But yes, I even interviewed for AWS, and part of it was, and that's where this confidence element, this was before I joined BeSA program, not because I did not know tech. Maybe there were some gaps. I would accept that, but more so because during technical interview, I froze and I could not even show them what I had and what I knew and what. But at the same time, I was sad. Honestly, I was upset, but I could not sit with that forever.
It's a learning experience, right?
It's a learning experience, and I moved on from that in the sense. And let me tell you, AWS, and now you guys do have a returnship program for solution architecture.
Yes.
It wasn't there then. That is the route I would have taken if that was there back in March. It wasn't, and that's okay. And I still took the leap and I did what I did. And there was a lot of learning within that experience as well.
So yeah, on that point, AWS has internship program for a lot of roles. Recently, they are for solutions architects also, but AWS and Amazon overall has a lot of openings for internship roles. So if anyone has a career break, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be able to help you in point the right direction. Or you can simply go to amazon.com/jobs. I think just search for internship and you'll be able to see
all you have to do is returnship, and you can even filter it by the country you're in,
Location.
and you should be able to. And within that, I mean, another little thing I would say is a lot of career fairs, a lot of stuff is virtual. Attend those, because that's where you making connections, and within my journey, this is classic. I mean, this is funny too, but at the same time, this is who I was when I started looking for a job. I started with about 45 or 50 LinkedIn connections, and I was literally hiding my, I mean, I didn't want to put in the experience because that's going to show the gap. And I was like, okay, no experience means, somehow I'm kind of, it's not visible, but closing my eyes wasn't helpful, is where, I built it up too. I did that, and built up my connections, put my, and owning my career break. When we talk about confidence element, that is huge in interviews. I mean, none of us, Prasad, I mean, you are at that principal architect level. I'm sure you're learning every day. I am doing whatever I'm doing. I don't know everything. And I probably wouldn't know everything even 10 years later. I don't know. But it's going to be a learning thing every day. But having that confidence and having that learning attitude is what was probably one of the selling things, or one of the things where it was a win, because once I embraced what I had, and transferable skills for that matter, because even though I may be at home, I had different set of challenges, and I overcome those challenges is what I could present in interviews. And at the same time, just let them know that if I have put in the work. You're not going to believe it, Prasad. There have been days when it was 16-hour days, like literally practically.
Studying.
Yeah. I mean, I would cook, clean, whatever I have to do, taking care of, it was barely any sleep on some days, but it wasn't because it was a push. It was because this is one thing I was passionate about. And when you are passionate about something, and this is what you love, it doesn't feel like work. And it doesn't feel like work even today. I mean, I'm barely a month in. I'm not required to be ramping up at the rate I'm ramping up at, but this is what I love, and let's face it, when I and Microsoft wasn't in my list of companies. And this is another thing I would say, rather than applying in bulk to many things, look where you really want to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be a FANG company. It has to be where your values align, what works for you given what your family and personal preferences are. And as much as Microsoft was not in the list of things, just when the talent sourcer reached out, I knew Microsoft's values and the way this company is.
So hold on.
Brainer. Yeah,
A talent sourcer reached out to you from Microsoft
they did.
on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn, yes.
And you started with 45 LinkedIn connections.
Yes.
So,
and by this time, I was ready. And by this time, I was active on LinkedIn. By this time, I already was following. See, this is another element. You are who you surround yourself with, like people even if it's virtual surrounding, even if I'm following people, I'm connecting with people based off of what do they have to offer, and they did reach out. And when they did reach out, and I went through the interview the way, I mean, the multiple steps, and one of the steps was writing a paper about like architecture overall. That was one of the things, in the sense that trying to see how I think. It was three vague questions. Not, I won't say vague, broad questions. You can take them in any direction. I wanted to answer them separately. I gave it 4 days to even think as to how I'm going to tackle those, right? Just the thought process, just as to what all could be entailed. And finally, when I wrote it, I started off with, I'm going to answer all three of them in one answer. I can't answer them separately because everything is tying in. So that's the process, and how everything, and that could be the business aspect of things, the actual technical aspect of things, or whatever. And Microsoft knew that I do not have any Azure certs yet, and they were willing to work with me. And I just got my first one within the first month. But at the same time, the important thing was, do I understand architecture? Do I understand? Am I willing to learn? Do I have the passion for cloud architecture overall? And then rest of it is going to fall in place. And fun fact, here I was for months trying to land one role. I just wanted to be like in IT now. I could not just detour at this point. And I landed two different roles at the same time with two great places. Microsoft is where I went with, and this is another consulting company. I don't even know if I should name it or not. Accenture is where I had another role, and that's another great place to work at. It was so hard to.
So you had two roles to choose from.
On
That's
the
okay.
same.
How many interviews did you fail before having these two offers?
Many, I would say. Many. But in the beginning, I was taking every single recruiter or anybody. But by the time it was a month mark, I was like, I can't do this. This is not sustainable, right? And that's when I started coming up with a list of people or list of things, or even the initial calls, or researching the companies to see if they're going to support me getting back, right?
Yeah.
And if that was the case, and if that is where I was getting that feel, and there were a couple of more companies which I kind of stopped. Meta was one of them, wherein we had the conversations. Okay, this is how it's going to be. It's in process. I had some rounds, and we were still waiting on moving forward. And after Microsoft offer came along and Accenture came along, I was like, that's it. The search is over and I'm done. So you have to kind of know all of that elements too. Where do you want to be? What aligns with your values? And be prepared. Be prepared in the sense, it's when we talk about the soft skills, I cannot say enough about those. Those are important. You being confident in the interview is important. Some of the things which could help could be, it might sound strange, but practicing in front of the mirror,
I totally agree. Confidence comes from preparation. Uh, so all the interviews that I have failed is mainly because I did not have enough confidence, because I was not enough prepared. Once you are prepared, you are confident, then it seems like it's a cakewalk. Not a cakewalk as such, but it becomes a lot more
it's
easy.
relatively easier. It's
Yeah.
relatively easier, and you're not stressed, and that's what happened with AWS interview. I did not practice enough. I'll be honest, and I have no qualms about saying that right here. I did not practice enough. But another takeaway from the experience I've had is learn from each experience, get better. And that would mean that you have to look at your own self and kind of be not like too critical, but at the same time, realistically be critical enough to see, where did I go wrong and how am I going to make it better next time? So, and with the Microsoft interview, Prasad,
There
you
is
didn't even.
one question, sorry to interrupt,
Okay.
which
Okay.
I've learned. What is the course that she took about architecture? And few people are asking that,
Okay, so there are two things. There's a company called Go Cloud Architects. It's a paid program though, so it's a choice. And I'm not I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but this was me back in April 2021 when I didn't know about any other communities as well, which were free. And and this was a good way for me connecting with people um, who were in the same journey. And that's where I made connections, in the sense that there were people heading in the same direction. We used to meet up. We would come up with like a business case, a scenario, discuss stuff, all of that. And of course, there were live classes also over there. In terms of books, um, there's one book by Saurav Mittal. He's an architect. He's a principal. I don't even know. He's been promoted. I can't even. I don't want to say his title wrong, but it's a solution architect book by it's Pact Publishers. I would say that's literally a Bible for solution architecture. It's not all focused on AWS services, but it's for things in general, like architecture, explaining from right at the basics in terms of what kind of architect positions you could have to quantum computing, like front to back, if you want to go through it. So that was another book which was helpful. But when we talk about what was helpful, it could be what are other people doing which is helping them. And at the same time, you work on your own gaps, knowledge gaps for that matter, and reach out to people who are already there and willing to help. In my case, Prasad didn't even know that Microsoft is where I was interviewing. I reached out. I reached out to him, and I reached out. And again, when you're seeking help, everybody who's volunteering, or everybody who's gonna help you out, have their own full-time jobs, have their own family stuff going on. Reach out with, this is what I've done already. Even if that means you're just starting out, I'm just starting out, can you help me get started? That's where you could be seeking help. Or you could be, the team I'm a part of, it's an app innovation team. I have never developed apps, but that doesn't mean I won't be able to do it, right? But at the same time, I knew that this is not my strong suit, right? And I reached out to Prasad and I was like, Prasad, I've already done this, this, this. These are the books I've gone through. This is what I've done. These are my knowledge gaps. Do you have any resources you can point me out to so that I can bridge those gaps? It was specific enough ask. And at the same time, joining those, the sessions every single week, he knew enough that I'm putting in my efforts from my side, is where he was so willing to just come out and say, okay, this is the Udemy course, this is what it is, look at it. I wouldn't have come across that if I didn't reach out to him. Reach out for help where you need help, but reach out, I would say, with not just, hey Prasad, I want a job, can you help me? Because
that's not how it works. I'll be barely able to help with that.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's not a dig on anybody, it's just a basic human reaction. And that's what I've learned along. Make connections as you go along. When you ask for help, do ask for help wherever you need help. Be respectful of other people's time too, and yet be specific with your ask. This is where I am, this is what it is. And Prasad was one of the first people who knew. Even when I could not even make it official, I was like, oh, I want you to know that, by the way, whatever you help me with, it helped. And I would be starting, but I'm still going through background, so it cannot be official, but I wanted you to know. So there's that. It's not one prescription. And like I said, it's been numerous hours of just going. It could be something like, um, you have your favorite people. If they have any kind of free YouTube courses, I would be in the kitchen listening to that. You go for walks, you listen to it. You may not be able to, and everybody has a life, challenges. but you have to carve out time. It could be smaller blocks of time. Do whatever works for you and kind of, you know, and get, and you will get where you need to be. It could be a little later than what you're planning on, but things are going to fall in place, is what I want to say.
Yeah, it's a like journey, sometimes long, but yeah, the hard work and determination is what is going to get you
Yeah.
there. So awesome. This is really helpful. And yeah, it's a very inspiring story for me, very personally, any, before we close this out, I know we are way over time, the 90
Yeah.
minutes mark that we thought, but
Oh
is there
my
any
God.
final advice that it's completely fine, it's very useful, very, very useful. Uh, Anyone who is starting out now at whichever phase of the career they are, is there any one advice that you would like to give them?
Keep at it. Don't be discouraged when things get discouraging, you know. Give yourself, I'd be like, yeah, you could be sad, you could be down, but don't let it get past a day or 2 or 4 days or whatever. Surround yourself with people um, who are positive, who are helpful, um, and just become a part of the community. You know, this community is a safe community. You know, look left, right, who servers there, connect with them. What are they doing? What is working for them? Um, you know, with the Prasad and group, you know, they might have limited bandwidth, but when you are, you know, within the BeSA group, other people might be able to help you. They might have a certain thing which is their strength, where you're trying to fill in those knowledge gaps. Connect with those people. And I would say it from my personal advice, like this other group that I'm part of, when I was starting out with this interview, and I'm like, hey, you've done app development. Can you fill me in on a few things? That guy got on the Zoom call. We spent 2 hours. That was more than enough for me to feel confident about where I was heading at. So it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who's already in the role. It could be somebody who's in, like, going through the same journey and yet be able to help you where you need to be. And one last piece of advice: when you get there, don't forget to give back. Um,
That's important. Yeah, I
yeah,
totally
I
agree.
don't know. And this is very, very, very important to me. And this is, and when you get to a new job, okay, fine, first couple of months could be busy, or within that time period, you're taking out 15-20 minutes for somebody else who's struggling or trying to get there. It could be just word of encouragement. Take out that time. You're not done. You know, you're not done by just getting there. You have to, not you have to. I don't know. It's just who I am. I would.
No,
And
that also is great feeling. It's like we keep learning, and
yes,
even by giving back, we learn a lot.
yes.
So yeah,
Keep learning. That's the big thing. And that's the big thing with Microsoft. I mean, that's what Satya Nadella is all about. Keep learning. And yeah, and feel free to reach out if there's anything I can help you with. And thank you again. Thank you, Prasad, Ashish, Chris, Jamila, Alex, James. I mean, I just cannot thank you guys enough.
no, thank you, and thank you for coming on and sharing your experience.
And sorry, it was too long. It was longer
No,
than what
no,
we.
no, no, no. It was really awesome. I think we have less time, frankly. We could have go for more. But yeah, I think, Ashish, probably you might want to come back and have your last spin for a winner.
So inspiring, Balwindwer. Means it makes our efforts worth what we are doing. So
Yeah.
it's really inspiring journey. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your experience. I hope we are able to inspire more people, and that would be people would be giving back to community. So thank you. Nice.
And thank
All right.
you.
So we'll touch. Probably we'll have you will have lots of fan following now on LinkedIn, I would say, and
That was
Probably.
not the point. If anything, if one person can leave feeling motivated, because
Exactly.
there can be days when you're down, and um, pick yourself up. That's what I keep saying. It can be hard on some days,
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
but yeah, keep on going. That's all, and keep learning.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right. So thanks everyone for staying a little longer, like we were not expecting, but yeah, that was so inspiring, and we hope it was worth your time. Thanks, Balwinder, for staying here longer than expected. So I hope everyone enjoyed, and all the best. We hope you would be again here, sharing more knowledge and helping more people. So thank you for that. Thanks, Prasad. So I'm now concluding the session. Last thing which is remaining is to do that final quiz. Give me a minute, I'll add that quiz link here and we will get started from there. So one is Naveen got a book, and the book which I have here, this is the book which I'm talking about. So this should be coming to someone else. Let me refresh the screen and let's see who we pick up now. Naveen, just reach out to me and let's see who is now. So him Dobriel, please reach out to me, Naveen and him Dobriel, and I would be happy to help you with getting your book. All right. So thank you, everyone. And we will see you next week. And if you have any suggestions, anything, let us know. We would try our best to share those things. We would try our best to give you the recording in some time. But yeah, it may take a little time before, because we also have weekend things to do and other stuff to take care of. So, but feel free to reach out if you have anything we could help you with. Thank you. Thank you so much. And hope to see you all. Let us know if you have any other suggestions, any questions, anything. We would be happy to help. And then last time adding Prasad and James, so we could say goodbye and we would see you next week. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much. Ending the broadcast now.